The recent unarmed clash between the PLA and the Indian Army at Yangtze, which is in Tawang sector of Arunachal Pradesh, was a clear and firm warning from the Chinese that India, from their thinking, does not want normal relations. Moreover, India seems to be threatening to breach China's political and military red lines, which was unacceptable to China. How I came to this conclusion, I will explain in three simple points. The first is the importance of Tawang. Tawang, besides being the homeland of the 6th Dalai Lama, has a great tactical significance for the Indian Army. In 1980, when Mrs. Indira Gandhi came back as the Prime Minister, the then Army Chief, General Krishna Rao, approached the Prime Minister with a plan which was called Operation Falcon. Operation Falcon was a plan to give fillip to the ill-conceived forward policy of the 1962 war, where the army had suggested to build infrastructure, a credible infrastructure along with communication over a period of 10 to 15 years to support the forward posts, the forward policy. Now, Mrs. Gandhi liked this because she always knew that any meaningful talks with China or Pakistan must be backed by credible forces in being. But the Prime Minister asked the Army Chief, "You're building the infrastructure, will this lead to war?" The Chief said, "Maybe." The Prime Minister said, "So be it, let there be war, but make sure that Tawang, which fell in the 1962 war, should not fall once again." So what the Army Chief did was, he designated the Tawang sector as the core vital area, which meant that this area had to be defended at all costs, and hence there would always be a preponderance of forces there. In 1987, when Somdrongchu incidents happened, the then Army Chief General Sundarji took advantage of this fact that Tawang sector was the core vital area, and he could move the entire defense line, which used to be at the Sela Pass, forward to the Tawang sector. So the point I am making is very simple, that even today it remains a vital area that has to be defended by the army command. Hence there are always large number of soldiers here, and this tactical advantage could not have been missed by the PLA. So what happened at Yangtze on December 9, lot of it is unknown to the people. It is all been said by unknown people. No officer has come on record. Nobody is very clear, except that a large number of PLA soldiers obviously came. I don't believe that they came to gain some tactical advantage there or take a post there, because to me it is similar to what happened in Doklam in 2017. There also we misconstrued the real motive of what they did in Doklam. Here also it was to give the message. This takes me to the second point. What is the message that they want to give? Both countries have signed the September 10, 2020 joint statement in Moscow, signed by Jaishankar and his counterpart Wang Yi, which clearly lays down that we agree on these terms, the 5 points of the joint communication, and if implemented, they will bring normalcy on the line of actual control. Now certainly they favor the Chinese rather than the Indians, because perhaps in September still that fear and shock of the Galwan had not worn off, and the government wanted to immediately have normalcy on the LAC. So the three key things that come out of this joint statement, they are that there will be no status quo ante. That means there is no question of going back to the positions what were in April 2020. Number two, that LAC will now be converted into border areas, and these border areas, as we have seen the example of Pangong Tso, Hot Springs, Gogra, the demilitarized zone of the border areas is not on the PLA side, it is entirely on the Indian side. And the third thing was that only disengagements will happen. That means where the two forces are eyeball to eyeball, there will be no de-escalation and certainly no de-induction. Now what the Chinese are saying is that they have already done at 4 places. The de-engagement has happened. As far as Demchok and Depsang are concerned, which are absolutely critical for both the Indian side and the Chinese side insofar as land war is concerned, they again want the same methodology, that the demilitarized zone be on the Indian side, which obviously is not acceptable to the Indian side, and this is where the things are stuck. So therefore, when India's Foreign Minister Jaishankar repeatedly says that normalcy on the LAC is essential for normal relations between the two countries, the point is you've already signed on it. And if you see the Chinese perspective, there is a bit of merit in that, their point, that why is this not being implemented? Not only that, in the meantime, India has gone steps further. For example, we are aware that when US Speaker Nancy Pelosi, she went to Taiwan in August 2021, and that was a very big thing as far as China was concerned. So China wanted, and in fact their ambassador here at that time, Sun Weidong, he publicly said that like 190 countries have done, India should also say that it is committed to a one China policy, because this is the basis for good relations between the two countries. India has not done that, which obviously is not liked by the Chinese side. Now you see their military red lines that they keep talking about. First of all, from China's perspective, the Quadrilateral Security Group, which is a grouping of 4 nations, India, America, Australia and Japan. This seems to be strengthening the US Indo-Pacific strategy along with AUKUS. AUKUS is an alliance of the 3 partners, which is Australia, UK and US. They say that this strengthens the Indo-Pacific. On the other hand, what the Chinese say is, from their perspective, India has signed under the Modi government 3 of those foundation agreements. 4 military foundation agreements have been signed, and now India is part of the American integrated deterrence strategy. Now this is a strategy of the Americans which will create the deterrence in the Indo-Pacific region, and which involves not only America, it involves its allies and the strategic partner, which is India. So what the Chinese say is that this threatens our maritime Silk Road, which runs along the sea lanes of communications in the Indian Ocean region, and it threatens the sea lanes of communications also, because after all, over 4 trillion worth of trade, Chinese trade, it comes from Europe, passes through the Red Sea and Gulf of Eden, and then comes into the Indian Ocean region. So they feel threatened by this. Not only that, India has gone steps further. For example, India now, however symbolic, India was part of the Malabar exercise in the Sea of Japan in November 2022. Now this could not have been liked by the Chinese, because after all, this is subsequent to India and US in April signing and agreeing to do combat patrols together. Combat is for traditional threats, it is not for non-traditional threats. So India has done this symbolically. Not only that, if you see at Oli is a place which is 100 kilometers from the line of actual control. India and US Special Forces, they recently did Yuddh Abhyas 2022 exercise, absolutely ignoring the protestations of the Chinese. So from Chinese point of view, all this is simply not acceptable, and the Chinese see that if India continues like this, continues to threaten the maritime Silk Road, the two countries may be heading for a war. So it is no longer a question of if, it is more a question of when the war will happen. Insofar as the Indian military is concerned, they seem to have assured or given a clear assurance to the government of India that look, we have the capability to take on the PLA, we can certainly stop them in the tracks. 1962 will not happen. They are saying this because they are completely oblivious even today of the PLA war, the war that the PLA will fight. Let me just highlight two things about the PLA war to put things into a bit of a perspective. The first is, Chinese are not looking for a war of attrition. They are looking at a cognitive confrontation. They are looking at a confrontation at the highest level, which is the strategic level, the political level. And for that, Xi Jinping has revised the deterrence theory of the Chinese. Now he talks about a strong deterrence system, where in addition to the nuclear weapons, cyber weapons and counter space capabilities are also included. In other words, the Chinese war will not be limited to a combat theatre. It will be a whole of nation war, where the entire focus will be, or most of the focus will be, how to disrupt completely the civilian life in India. And we have seen a lot of the cyber attacks that they've been doing. I mean, they did one in 2020, a major power outage happened in Mumbai. Then they did recently we've seen the cyber attacks at the All India Institutes of Medical Sciences. The whole idea is that this puts maximum pressure on the political leadership, and that is called cognitive confrontation, and that leads to early defeat without loss of many lives on both sides. So that is one thing that they will do. It will be a whole of nation thing. As far as the combat zone is concerned, it is well established that their strategy is called systems destruction strategy, which basically means to blind the enemy. That is the aim. How do you blind the enemy? You deny him communication, you attack his communication nodes, you attack his command and control structures, so that the entire chain of command, there is chaos. And if the chain of command does not function, then people don't know, they run helter-skelter, they don't know the war is over. So they have the capability for this also in what is called the strategic support force, which has cyber capabilities, and they are huge, and they have electronic warfare capabilities under that. Along with that, the Chinese have what is called the rocket force, which today is the largest inventory of missiles in the world they have. In fact, just to give a comparison, the Indian side is completely oblivious of it and only believes that, you see, all these new technologies which have come in, they are force multipliers to the existing platforms that they have. The reality is they will replace those platforms. The reality is that those new technologies are a force by itself, which is not being understood by the Indian side. The Americans understand this very well, absolutely aware about the huge capabilities that the Chinese have in electronic warfare, counter space capability and cyber. Now, the Americans have shifted their battle networks. From battle networks, they are going on to the tactical cloud. The point I am making is that India simply does not have the wherewithal, the capabilities and the war concept to stand up to the PLA, and I have explained this in detail in my book, The Last War, which recently came out. And this is not something which is futuristic, it is all now. As you see, the Americans are now converting to the tactical battleground. So here is the bottom line. The bottom line is, the government must tell the nation, or at least tell the key opposition parties in an in-camera session, what exactly happened on December 9th. Because what actually, no officer of the Indian Army has gone on record explaining this. Everybody is just kite flying, and some unnamed sources are there. This is required so that one understands the quantum of threat and what needs to be done. India should not underplay or ignore the China threat, which is massive. Thank you.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.